Sorcery Contested Realm might be best described as what you'd get if you combine chess with magic. It's a collectible card game, played on a grid of 20 squares known as the realm. Placement and movement of cards on the board and their positions relative to one another add an additional layer of strategy. To get started, players choose an avatar card, a character with unique abilities that represents you during the game. Each player has 2 decks of cards, a spell book of at least 60 spell cards, and an atlas of at least 30 sight cards. Sights are magical lands played to the squares of the grid, creating terrains your units can traverse, as well as generating mana, which you will use to cast spells and activate abilities. Sights can be separated into 2 main types. Water sights are identified by the water threshold icon on the right side of the text box. All other sights are considered land sights. In addition to generating mana, sights provide elemental affinity. Affinity is not spent when casting spells. Instead, certain spells require you maintain a minimum affinity threshold in order to cast them. Sight and spell cards are divided into 4 rarity types, and constructed decks are subject to restrictions based on card rarity. Decks may include up to 4 copies of any ordinary card, 3 copies of any exceptional card, 2 copies of any elite card, and you can only include 1 copy of any unique rarity card in your deck. To set up a game of sorcery, first clear some space on the table for the realm. Players place their avatar in the middle of their bottom row, shuffle and place your spellbook and atlas. Determine who will take the first turn, then draw 3 cards from each deck. If you're not satisfied with your starting hand, you may take 1 mulligan. To take a mulligan, return up to 3 cards from your hand to the bottom of their respective deck. Then draw as many cards as was returned to each deck. As an avatar loses life, either from taking damage directly or their sights being attacked, its connection with the realm weakens. When an avatar's life is reduced to 0, they are now at death's door and can no longer gain life. At that moment, the wounded avatar becomes immune to damage for the rest of that turn. After that brief and desperate window, any damage dealt to the avatar is a death blow, finally severing their connection to the realm and signaling their defeat. At the start of the game, avatars begin in the void and must tap to activate their ability to play a sight card beneath themselves. Sights are usually played once per turn by tapping your avatar, although they can enter the realm in other ways. Players must play sights adjacent to each other, filling in the void and creating new terrains their units can traverse. Contiguous squares of water sights join to create a body of water. Similarly, contiguous sections of land sights create spans of land. It is possible to have more than one of these, or for the realm to be an entire span of land or water. Altogether, there are 4 regions in the game: void, surface, underground, and underwater. Each sight is made up of 2 levels, above and below the card. A sight's upper level is generally referred to as the surface, and its lower level is the subsurface. The surface is where units typically move and wage war on the enemy. All units above a sight are considered to be on the surface. The subsurface is divided into 2 regions depending on what type of sight it is. The lower level of a land sight is part of the underground region. Similarly, the lower level of a water sight is part of the underwater region. Existing in the subsurface is extremely hazardous, and minions that somehow find their way there immediately die, unless otherwise allowed to do so with special abilities. If a card refers to something atop a sight, it applies to something on the surface of the sight, but not anything below it. Similarly, if a card refers to something under a site, it applies to something in the subsurface of the site, but not anything above it. For example, the porcupine pufferfish occupies the underwater region under the site in its square. The headless haunt occupies a square in the void region. The cave trolls occupy the underground region under the site in its square. The sea serpent and Dulvian kraken occupy the surface region atop the sites in their squares, as does the king of the realm atop the site in his square. Perhaps the most single important key concept to understand is how to identify areas in the realm relative to your card's position. A location is defined as one region in one square. Here and there are used contextually to refer to the location or locations that a card occupies. For most cards, such as avatars, minions, and artifacts, that means one location. For most auras, it means the 2x2 area that they occupy. For sites, it means two locations, their surface and subsurface. Sometimes, you'll need to target things in the realm. Spells and abilities can only target things within the spellcaster's or referencing card's same region. Adjacent and nearby. Adjacent refers to the card's own square and the squares that it shares a border with. Nearby refers to the card's own square and all squares surrounding it, including those diagonally. Only locations that are in the same region as the referencing card or its spellcaster are considered adjacent or nearby locations. In this example, the King of the Realm is beset by enemies on nearly all sides, but some pose a greater risk than others. Let's take a closer look. The king is adjacent to the sea serpent because it's next to him on the surface of the site and therefore in the same region. Similarly, the Dulvian kraken is nearby the king. The king is not adjacent to the headless haunt because the haunt is in the void region. The cave trolls are not adjacent to the king because they are burrowed and therefore in a different region. Similarly, the porcupine pufferfish is not nearby the king because it's submerged. The pufferfish and cave trolls are not adjacent to each other as they are in different regions, underwater and underground respectively. Similarly, the pufferfish is not adjacent to the headless haunt, nor are the cave trolls nearby the headless haunt. A step is the minimum unit of distance between two locations. Some card abilities will have an effect that will happen a step away or even several steps away from where the card is or its origin point. In these cases, it will say it happens X steps away. Sorcery Contested Realm is built around the four classical elements: air, earth, fire, and water. Most spells in a spellbook are tied to these elements, giving avatars the power to manipulate the magic of the realms. Each element has its strengths and weaknesses. Certain abilities can be common in one element, yet very rare in another. The four elements and their characteristics are air. Air is the element of knowledge and power, dabbling in forces beyond mortal control to acquire the magical means to respond to any battlefield situation. An attunement with air grants you both mobility and tactical options, thanks to its ability to teleport units around the realm and to increase its available spells. Earth. Earth is the element of enduring strength, defined by its focus on fielding and enhancing martial forces throughout the realm. An attunement with Earth grants you the ability to affect your Atlas, and minions that can dominate the battle through teamwork and sheer fighting power. Fire. Fire is the element of desire and destruction, willing to do whatever it takes to secure victory in the realm. An attunement with fire grants you an array of explosive spells and abilities that can create bursts of speed, burning friend and foe alike in gouts of flame. Water. Water is the element of charm and trickery, ready to adapt and disrupt the strategy of the enemy as it manipulates all. An attunement with water grants you a powerful home field advantage that will slowly engulf the realm, and the ability to position the enemy right where you want them. There are three main categories of cards: avatars, sites, and spells. Spells further break down into four card types: minion, artifact, aura, and magic. The following will describe each card type. Avatars. Your avatar represents you and your connection to the realm. Everything you do within the realm is done through your avatar. Avatars have some key characteristics. Each avatar has a name. Avatars have a starting life, which will rise and fall during the game and tells you how much your avatar can endure before being placed at death's door. This is also the avatar's maximum life, which cannot be exceeded. Avatars have an attack power rating, which tells you how hard they hit in combat. Avatars have a text box, which describes their special abilities. All avatars are spellcasters, which means they can cast spells, most often from your hand. Finally, avatars can never enter a region other than the surface. Sites are usually played by activating your avatar's ability, although they may enter the realm in other ways. You and your opponent can also attack each other's sites to cause your avatars to lose life. So make sure to defend yours. Sites have some key characteristics. Sites have a name. Sites have a type line that describes key things about that card, such as rarity. Most sites have elemental symbols that increase your elemental affinity, which you will harness to cast spells and activate abilities. Sites also have a text box that describes their special ability. When a site is destroyed, it's placed in its owner's cemetery as normal, but rather than creating a new void, the site is instead replaced with rubble. Rubble is a neutral land site that no player controls and provides no mana or threshold. Spells. Spells represent all of the magical might that you're able to bring to bear on the realm. Any card in your hand that isn't a site is a spell. Most spells share some key characteristics. Spells have a mana cost, and most spells have an elemental threshold that your elemental affinity must meet in order to be cast. Minions have a power rating which describes how hard they hit, as well as how much damage they can take before dying. Each spell has a type line that describes key characteristics about that card, such as subtypes and rarities. Spells have a text box that describes their special abilities. Spells can be broken down into four card types: minion, artifact, aura, and magic. The following will describe each type. Minions are your greatest allies, assisting you with unique abilities in offense and defense. A unit is a collective term that includes both avatars and minions. Some cards might specify one of these types, but most affect units in general. Tokens are small-sized cards that work more or less the same as regular cards while in the realm. The major difference between cards and tokens is that tokens are never part of a player's deck, and they can never formally exist in any zone except within the realm. If a token would be placed anywhere else, it is instead removed from the game entirely. All units have access to 5 basic abilities that are not printed on their card. 3 are activated abilities that will allow them to interact with the realm. These are Move and Attack, which is the ability you'll use most often, Pick Up and Drop, which both relate to carrying artifacts. The remaining 2 are triggered abilities that units can perform during the opponent's turn. These abilities are called Defend and Intercept. Move and Attack. Every unit can tap and activate the Move and Attack ability, which allows it to optionally move, then optionally attack something at its location. When using this ability, declare the intended movement path and resolve it. After resolving all of the movement, then decide if you want to attack at that location. When moving a unit, its journey is broken down into individual steps. By default, units can move 1 step. However, some abilities allow units to take additional steps, such as movement plus X. Other abilities, like Airborne, allow units to take steps diagonally, or even into different regions. Minions with Submerge or Burrowing can move into the underground regions from the surface of a site, which counts as one step. To move a unit using the Move and Attack ability, first you declare each step the unit will take, and then you resolve the steps in order. When you declare movement, the only restriction is that you may not repeat specific steps. Normally, this means that you will simply declare a single step from the surface of one site to the surface of an adjacent site. For example, your Amazon warriors have tapped to use their Move and Attack ability, and you declare a step from the surface of the rustic village to the surface of the holy ground. Attacking the enemy. You may only attack units or the surface of enemy sites that are at your location. When using the Move and Attack ability, you must resolve any movement before declaring and resolving your attack. As you resolve the attack, you confirm it is a legal target at that moment, and if so, your unit has attacked. For example, the Amazon warriors tap to declare Move and Attack. The Amazon warriors first declare and resolve their movement. Then, once they're done moving, they have the option to attack. If you attack an enemy unit, either as your original intent or because your opponent defended, the units involved will fight. To fight, units strike each other simultaneously. When a unit strikes, it deals damage equal to its power. Carrying on from the example, the Amazon warriors and Rimland nomads now fight, striking each other simultaneously. The warriors deal 5 damage to the nomads, who deal 2 damage in return. Defend. Defend is one of the 2 basic abilities that you can use on your opponent's turn, because it's a triggered ability. When an enemy attacks another unit or site within your unit's range of motion, your unit may tap to defend, moving to the attack's location and joining in the fight. Any number of units may defend against an attacker. During this movement, a defending unit may use any of its movement abilities, such as Airborne, Burrowing, Movement plus X, Submerge, or Voidwalk. When multiple units defend or intercept an attack, the attacking unit's controller decides how its attack power is distributed among the defending units. In this case, the opponent attempts to attack your site with its Amazon warriors, who would deal 5 damage to your site, causing you to lose 5 life. In response, you tap both your Highland Princess and your Vampire to defend. The Vampire has a power of 4, and the Princess with a power of 1 will deal 5 total damage to the Amazon warriors, causing them to die. The controller of the Amazon warriors chooses to distribute 4 of its 5 damage points to your Vampire and 1 point of damage to the Highland Princess, so none of these units will survive. If the original target of the attack was a unit, the defender's controller may decide if that unit remains in the fight, or is removed. If the original target was a site, it's automatically removed. Intercept is the other triggered ability that your units can perform on your opponent's turn. When an enemy using the Move and Attack ability finishes its movement and chooses not to attack, any of your units there may tap to intercept and fight that enemy. Units cannot move when they intercept. They must already be at the enemy's location. Pick up or drop artifacts are the other basic abilities that units can perform. Each unit can activate their pickup basic ability once per turn, which allows it to pick up any number of target artifacts at its location that are not currently being carried. The drop basic ability allows a unit to drop any number of artifacts it's carrying. Each unit can activate the drop basic ability once per turn, as long as it hasn't interacted with the realm this turn. A unit can carry any number of artifacts, which will move with the unit throughout the realm. If a unit is carrying any artifacts when it leaves the realm, the artifacts are dropped. If a unit and an artifact it's carrying stop sharing a location due to some effect, the artifact ceases to be carried. Artifacts carried by a unit are controlled by the player who controls that unit. Artifacts that could be carried but are not currently being carried are uncontrolled. Artifacts that cannot be carried normally, such as automations and monuments, are controlled by the player who conjured them. Artifacts have a variety of subtypes, including armor, weapons, relics, devices, documents, automations, and monuments. While most artifacts are standard objects that can be carried into battle, others, such as automations and monuments, have some further characteristics and restrictions. Automations are artifacts that are minions. As such, they have a power rating. They have the same basic abilities as regular minions and cannot be carried like regular artifacts. Monuments are an artifact subtype that cannot be carried. Auras are mostly incorporeal but lasting manifestations of elemental power. They usually impact a large area within the realm, conferring boons or conditions within their reach. Magics are transient spells that have immediate impact and then dissipate as soon as they resolve. Each player has a cemetery, which represents a record of spent magic, dead minions, and broken artifacts. Whenever any of your cards are discarded, destroyed, resolved, or otherwise expired, place them face up in your cemetery. Players may freely examine the contents of any cemetery at any time, and the order of cards in a cemetery is irrelevant. Sorcery Contested Realm is played over a series of turns. Players take their turns, one at a time, following this sequence of phases. The start phase is the first phase you complete during your turn. All abilities that last until next turn now end. Then, Step 1, all of your cards that are tapped now untap. Step 2, all of your sites now provide their mana for this turn. Step 3, trigger abilities that happen at the start of your turn. And Step 4, finally, draw a card from either your spellbook or atlas. Then you move to your main phase. The main phase of your turn is where most of sorcery's actions and events take place. During this phase, your units can be ordered to do two types of actions. They can cast a spell if they're a spellcaster, or activate one of their abilities. You may have your units do these as many times as you have resources to do so, and in any order that you like. For example, each of your sites now provide 1 mana that you can spend this turn. Currently, that number is 3. Note that your opponent's aqueduct does not provide you with mana. In your hand, you have some minions and a site. You could play the Siege Crabs or the Polar Explorers, as their total mana cost is 3. You don't currently have enough mana to play Captain Baltazar with his mana cost of 4. However, you do have a site, Maelstrom, that you can play using your avatar's ability. Playing Maelstrom would bring your total mana available up to 4, allowing you to play Captain Baltazar, saving the Crabs and Explorers for a later turn. Sorcery is a complicated game, but I think after a little gameplay you'll find the rules to be intuitive and that it offers a very rewarding gameplay experience. This video is intended to be a concise explanation of rules for newcomers to the game. If you're interested in sorcery rules, please like and subscribe so you don't miss part 2, where I'll dive into more advanced concepts like the storyline. Thanks.